I still haven't gotten over the guru comment. uh, I don't think I have that much. So let me see if I can fill up the 5 minutes. You asked me for a tentative title, and I thought of Getting Off Our High Horse, or 5 Minutes of Anti-Exceptionalism, or Have We Considered that Gestalt Therapy is not the answer? And that goes directly to one of my values that I ought to have mentioned before, is that what attracted me to Gestalt therapy was Gestalt therapy is at the edges. Gestalt therapy is always the therapy of the deviant. Whoever and whatever the deviant is on the edge. There was once a conference where a keynoter, I think it was in the Silmar, had the keynote was radical inclusion. And I sat next to someone and said, no, I don't want to be included. Leave me alone. I like the perception of being on the edge, because at being on the edge, we see something that you can't see from the center. When you belong, you lose something. When you're outside, you see something. So Gestalt therapy is a therapy of the outside. And from the outside, we have a particular point of view. Now, I say we have a particular point of view, and my first note is how audacious it is to say anything about a we. How audacious it is for us to talk about Gestalt therapy as if there is such a thing as Gestalt therapy. There is as many Gestalt therapists, there's as many Gestalt therapies as there are Gestalt therapists. So it's impossible to set up Gestalt therapy and say, Gestalt therapy is not doing this, Gestalt therapy is doing that. It is an arrogance to think Gestalt therapy is a Gestalt therapy of English, of Spanish, of German, is Russian. To say Gestalt therapy is paying attention to the environment, is not paying attention to the environment. Is anthropocentric, is arachnocentric. Gestalt therapy has open doors everywhere at best. From the margins, we can see wherever we want to see. Now, narcissism. Do we really want to say narcissism? From the edges, is there such a thing as narcissism? Aren't we in experiential psychotherapy? Isn't that one of the things that we've learned at the margins? So let's look at what a narcissistic experience is and what is our role at the edges to learn about that narcissistic experience. One of the things the narcissistic experience has at its core is the sense that other people are saying what I have said or not said. Well, the Gestalt therapy experience that I've heard so often is that everybody else is saying what we've said or meant. They're stealing our ideas. I've heard that for decades. Well, we have to reflect when we have that experience that they have stolen our ideas. Well, the fact of the matter is that Gestalt therapy is of a world of other therapies, and we have common roots. We're not the only therapy that's phenomenological. We're not the only therapy that's experiential. We're not the only therapy that's learned from Gestalt psychology. We're not the only therapy that's learned from Buddhism. We're not the only therapists who've read Buber. We're not the only therapists who've read philosophy. Everybody's in this pot together. Gestalt therapy famously began with that impossible book, the PhD, which is a combination of the Book of Mormon and the Communist Manifesto. It declared that it had the answer, that John said that you were taught that it found everything wrong with psychoanalysis, you were taught. But you know what? It also said there was a lot of things right about psychoanalysis, and that hadn't been taught. That was an error in the early training of Gestalt therapy. A lot was right in psychoanalysis, and that is part of our heritage. How often is that taught? Every psychotherapy has a notion of the promised land. Gestalt therapy has a notion of the promised land. What is our outcome? What is our salvation? How is it different in the different Gestalt therapies from place to place to place to place? And how is that different from the salvation that all the other modalities offer? Probably not that different. We say that awareness is the core of Gestalt therapy. Well, it brings the same outcome that the release of unconscious conflicts bring in psychoanalysis that the dissolving of fixed schema in cognitive or the whatever. You people who've been trained in other modalities probably know more than I do about that. We all have the same place we want people to land. And if we look up and around, we want this, hopefully the same place, the planet, to land. Many modalities now are paying attention to the wound on the planet Earth. Our notion in Gestalt therapy, basic notion in Gestalt therapy, is a human being is an animal organism in the environment, and we cannot understand human beings unless we understand us as organisms of the environment. That is a serious statement. Our environment is our climate. Our environment is our planet. It is basic to contacting. Now that brings me to the heart of Gestalt therapy. Now this is what I think separates Gestalt therapy from other therapies. I'm in a seminar with interpersonal Gestalt therapists, the Donna Orange people, and they're very similar to, we speak a very similar language. We're reading a lot of stuff for philosophy. One of the things they say, there are Gestalt therapists in it, is that you Gestalt therapists have an expertise in talking about experience that we don't have yet. Because we've been paying attention. I'm talking about we, crucify me. We have been talking about experience for a long time. We have been paying attention to experience. And in our paying attention to experience, we have the idea, the technique and understanding called contacting. I don't think other modalities have that precise way of looking at things. That is at the heart of Gestalt therapy. That is our phenomenology. That is our method. This is our activity. This is our epistemology, and it is our ontology. This is the through line, my understanding, that connects all Gestalt therapy, whether it's Gestalt therapy that's an English language Gestalt therapy, a Russian language Gestalt therapy, a Spanish language Gestalt therapy. I'm very conscious of this, that we not have an English hegemony of Gestalt therapy, because as I think, John, you said, the Gestalt therapy is collapsing in the United States. There are very few of us here. But it's contacting that is the thread that pulls Gestalt therapy together. And it keeps Gestalt therapy at the margins. Because what it does is that it strips away, helps us strip away all of the material that gets in the way of the core of experiencing, so that we can find what we have in common. And when we find what we have in common, it unites us as people in our common human experiencing. And when we find that, we're able to open doors cross-culturally. We open doors cross-culturally. We can find ways to address what is contemporary now. Contemporary politically and socially is to look at things such as refugees, the alien, look at things such as interpersonal relationships, cross boundaries. I think our Gestalt conferences are paying attention to this exquisitely. When our avenue into this is nothing special. Our avenue into this is simply contacting. A moment about awareness, because that's hanging in the air from the first presentation. It's easy to say that we got awareness from Buddhism. It's easy to say that. I don't think we did. Awareness came from our phenomenological roots. It later came from Buddhism. Now, it's kind of unfair to say it's from one or the other, because Gestalt therapists take from many different places. But it's just as easy to bring in awareness, the here and now, from a simple concept from phenomenology as it is from Buddhism. And the difference is how much other baggage you bring with it. And I'm very aware and conscious of what we use, how we connect Gestalt therapy to other sources, and the baggage we bring in when we bring in other sources. There are ample reasons for us to be conscious of our place in the world without bringing in baggage from other disciplines. I could say a lot more on that, and I won't. And I don't know whether I've gone over 5 minutes, and I could probably go an hour and a half. I didn't write a paper. I didn't check my notes. Let me just see if I want to say something that was absolutely brilliant that I didn't touch on. And the absolutely brilliant was, of course, my narcissistic experience. And I want to say something. Are we uber academic? Who wrote that? Whose idea was that? We're unter academic, for God's sakes. Are we trying? Are we?
That was on the promotional material.
I know. Are we trying to? Our material. We haven't written enough. We haven't researched enough. We haven't thought through in an embodied way enough. We haven't developed the language that we can speak to one another in a clearly and meaningful way, so that cross-culturally within our community, we can make sense across the world. So we have in common something that relates to what we do, think, and practice. So that across our institutes, no matter how we've been trained, we can say, yeah, this is how we work. This is what it means to work this way. This is how we relate to how we've worked and how we will work in the future. We can do this when we've been able to articulate a theory and practice. We do this through our studies, through our research, and from our talking to one another in a meaningful way. Not merely by having experiences together, not merely by feeling good or bad together, or working with our shame together, but by our making sense of it. Sense in a sensed way and in a meaningful, thoughtful way. Unless we pay attention to those whole experiences and publish them and read them and talk about them, we're not a whole modality. We're not, that's period. We're unter academic, not uber academic, period. Thank you very much for your attention.